There are risks and costs to action, but they are far less than the long-range risks of comfortable inaction.
This is SPRH Podcast, where business experts help you to take massive action. With your hosts, corporate and keynote speakers Matt Ward and Dan Candell. Change your business, change your life, and start now.
Hey, and welcome to the SPRH Podcast. I'm Dan Candell here with Matt Ward and our special guest today. Matt, would you rather work smart, work hard, or work stupid? What would you rather do?
Not work.
Oh.
Does that count? That wasn't even an option.
That wasn't an option.
I'd like to work smart, actually.
You'd like to work smart?
Yeah.
Do you think you have to work hard before you work smart?
Sometimes I feel like I feel like I have worked very, very hard to become a very smart worker.
Yeah.
It's a discovery process, I think.
It's a discovery process, and that's what our next podcast guest is going to talk about today, and also how to position yourself as the authority so you can start working smarter instead of harder. So please welcome a fellow colleague, a fellow hypnotist, and a fellow business guru, Jason Linett. Welcome, Jason.
Hey, Dan and Matt, so good to be here.
Jason, thanks for joining us on the Square Peg Round Hole podcast. Thank you so much. As you know, we help small business owners take massive action. And unlike last week's podcast, we're not talking about the bathroom. Can you share with our listening audience what massive action you have taken and what the results of that massive action were?
Yeah, one of the massive actions that I've actually replicated many times over is that opportunity to take some sort of experience that experience alone was a good event for my business. Let's say whether it's writing an article for another publication, something that's in an industry that I'm already working within, or perhaps maybe here's some piece of media that was written about me. And it's to play that game by asking the question, who else needs to see this? And to then take that thing as if it were an asset and now leverage that to a much bigger audience, and very much a value-first mindset. So taking that piece, and I mean at times blanketing at times through direct mail, sending that to other decision makers, other influencers, simply from that point of view to go, hey, you might have already seen this. Here's an extra copy so you've got it as a resource. Briefly, here's what I do. I'd love to chat with you soon. So in a very non-salesy way, taking a massive action to actually reach out to that audience and demonstrate that authority that I'd already built within that field.
You mentioned something about value, which there's a huge benefit to adding value first. What are some ways that you add value to or provide value for people?
Well, it's coming down to the formula of show rather than tell. So I can stand there and say, I'm really good at this and I'm good at what I do, and people who use what I teach get results. Instead, it's so much better to show them how to do it. So at times, it's that willingness to sometimes present some of your best information, to put it out there with the goal that whether this person buys from me or not, they're going to leave the experience better off than they came in. Which of course builds in that natural mechanism that if I got this result, I wonder what next result I can get. And to really let that sales relationship be driven by the mindset that how can I make this easier for you? So I can teach you how to resolve this problem, how to grow this part of your business. Though of course it's a little bit easier if I'm there to help you out along this journey. So lead with that value, aim for the goal of getting somebody some kind of small win to make the world a better place, as it were, and then navigate that conversation to then naturally move forward in that business relationship.
So you're building that relationship and essentially showing people how great and amazing you are without actually tooting your own freaking horn.
Well, at the same time, I mean, looking at it for people to make it their own success, there's a teaching style that I've kind of fallen into over the years, where the anecdote, the sort of catchphrase of it is that it's my responsibility to not turn you into a clone of me. It's really my responsibility to give you sometimes the almost insane level of detail that I put into some of the work that I do. That way you know the how and the why, the motivators inside of it. That way you can pick and choose for yourself. This is the mechanism that's right for my business. This is the sort of mindset in terms of addressing this change that fits within my personality and my situation. So it's, yes, at times it does start off with the here's what I've done, but it's more important to let people make that success their own, to fit that within their own business, within their own lifestyle.
mean, Jason, we'd all love to wear the Jason Linett suit, but there's only 2 of those. I have one of them.
And it's not going to fit me.
I know a friend of mine, actually, I don't know if I ever told you this, Dan. A friend of mine years ago, he went to a thrift store around Halloween and he bought a sort of black pinstripe suit and a purple tie. Now, he's like 6'4". So for Halloween, he went as Hulk Jason Linett. He just ripped it to shreds, and that's what he wore.
Matt, and to our listeners, Jason Linett has pretty much branded a very specific shade of purple, and he is known and forever will be known for branding purple. So Matt, looking over Jason's shoulder, there's a giant jar there with cigarettes, filled with cigarettes. And
that's pretty unhealthy, Jason. You should not be doing that.
I finally had a client come into the office and ask me if I smoke myself, which was brilliant because he was going, you're helping people stop smoking and they're paying you, but then also you wouldn't have to buy your own if you were a smoker.
They just give you all the leftovers.
I'm having to respond. It's like no one has ever, I've seen like 1,000 people for that. And like no one has ever thought that up. That's brilliant. But no, I don't.
A secondary market.
But you have all those cigarettes behind you, and without even saying it, it kind of positions as to what you do, and it leaves a little bit of impression there. People notice it, unless you're Matt, who obviously doesn't notice it, but positioning yourself and positioning these things around yourself are ways to boost authority and credibility without, like we said, without tooting your own horn.
Right. It's that perspective that how do I demonstrate that in a way that, again, I can sit there and just say, this is what I do, this is what I'm good at, which admittedly in our copy, we often do highlight those things. But it's about building that environment for success. And my real opinion on this is to demonstrate what is there rather than fabricate what isn't there. So, for example, if I'm seeing a client live in my office, they're coming into a space, they're seeing awards, they're taking a tour through the office, through the classroom, which is all stacking that expectation, which look at the ways that we can do that in any business, whether it's here's just that list of reviews that you have. Here's the way that we position those things that we've accomplished to really help to set the stage that, yes, this is the place where that result happens. And I'm the person who can absolutely help you resolve this issue. And this product's going to help you because here's just the evidence around it.
Yeah, I think we come from this from the same place, which is the caring place, right? That's what I go around the country talking about. And sharing information with other people is one of the things I talked about in my book, where you can take, an article that is something that you found that's relative to somebody else and share it with them. I didn't really talk too much about taking your own information and sharing it with them, because I do see that as a sales approach. Now, yeah, you can tone it down a little bit into the caring mode, but when you tack on this is what I do and this is how I can help you, it becomes a sales pitch. So I want to dig into that a little bit because our mindsets are a little bit different when it comes to that. Certainly, I know that we all, as small business owners, have to make sales or we are out of business. That's the reality. I tend myself to struggle with a sales pitch. I tend to let people come to me and let them come to me as who I'm known for. So I would stop that conversation point at, oh, by the way, here's a list of some things I wrote. Here's a blog post I wrote. When I write in CU Insight for the Credit Union magazine, I send it to my connections on LinkedIn. And it's just information. It's not a sales pitch. How do you balance the difference between sending out something that is completely informational versus adding on the angle of, this is how you can work with me?
I think the first thing I can say in response to that question would be that you can have pizza at the Chinese food buffet, and that's okay. Let's figure out that statement for a moment. And the statement kind of came out.
That's not where I would go to get pizza.
I know, right?
Believe me, I go to a lot of places to get pizza.
Yeah, but it came about from talking with a student and friend of mine that he was struggling with, do I just create a sales page for this product? Do I do the funnel type setup thing? Do I go out and talk about it? Which one do I do? And I was answering him in a very direct way, and it just wasn't clicking until I finally just decided to go metaphorical on this one, to go, yeah, you can have pizza at the Chinese food buffet. You go there and they have foods on the buffet that are not Chinese food, perhaps for the reason that maybe here's a picky eater and there's chicken nuggets, there's French fries, and one of the ones we often go to with our family, yes, they have pizza. And is it wrong to have pizza at the Chinese food buffet? Only if you think it is. If you want the pizza, enjoy the pizza. So really what I'm getting at here is that this strategy that I mentioned is not the only way that I'll do it. So for example, if I'm looking at maintaining a relationship with past clients, past students, past relationships, it's not always going to be, hey, here's another testimonial about me. Hey, here's another article about me. Because politely, those people already think I'm cool. Those people are already in rapport with me. It's instead that opportunity to reach out. I learned this in a career that I was in 15 years ago. I was working in management in professional theater. I was working as a stage manager. And don't you dare walk into the dressing room before the performance and ask the question, hey, just making sure everything's all right? Because now they respond, why? What's going on?
Oh.
It's always instead from the mindset of checking in to see if you needed anything. Hey, or to find a reason to be there. Hey, I'm running down to this area of the, management area in the first floor. Do you need anything while I'm down there? And it's at that point they'd say, hey, I can't find my shoes, or hey, we're running out of this makeup piece, whatever it would be. So this is one of my main strategies for checking in with past clients. Rather than going, hey, still working? Instead, here's something of value that I think you're going to benefit from even further. Here's an article that I found in this magazine, something online. Here's a video on YouTube. And I'm using that other style of the relationship, sometimes to even continue to finesse a relationship that is not yet established professionally. It's going to be a mixture of my content and other people's content too. So yes, to kind of bring it full circle, you're at the Chinese food buffet, have the pizza. It's all right. There's different ways of going about it. So having multiple streams of communication, I think, is the answer.
Yeah. And I think it can all be summed up that you're down with OPC.
Yeah, you know me.
Oh, you guys are clearly older than I am.
Down with other people's content.
It's okay, Dan. You are also naughty by nature.
I got that one. So, Jason, you've built multiple six-figure businesses, and you did it by working smart and also by being comfortable with testing out new strategies. You're known as the business guinea pig, where you're going to test things out before you put it out there for other people to learn. Can you talk about the mindset a little bit of doing new things and putting things out there before you actually start teaching it, and talk about a little bit about the systems that you've built as well?
Right. And that word systems is what it all comes down to. And when I talk about working smart, which even I've embraced is not grammatically correct, but it comes down to working with purpose, with intention, and working with focus. So to go into something, and perhaps it's part of my upbringing. I came from a family where everybody was an entrepreneur. So my parents were photographers. My grandfather owned furniture stores, jewelry shops. So the idea of launching something of your own was not unique. So the idea of metaphorically running off and joining the circus wasn't too far off. And having a hobby as magic as a teenager, perhaps that was close too. So to look at it from the personal side of it, I've always worked from the thought that nothing is worth doing unless you're going to put full effort into it, at least for 2 years. So it's where even when I opened up the business of Virginia Hypnosis, it wasn't, let me find a temporary office and just dabble and see how it goes. No, I signed the big, scary 3-year lease and went, I'm going to do this. I'm going to make this happen. So there's the opportunity at times to start to test the market, to start to see what will people best respond to. And this is kind of that systematic way of going into something new without breaking the bank, without going into debt on something that you don't know yet people will actually respond to. So whether it's the live services, in the original days, I was going out and networking, and based on what people were telling me they had an interest in resolving, those are the things I started to promote. Rather than instead going, I want to work on this, I think this is cool, I began to listen to my audience. And sometimes too, that drive, that part of my original part of teaching business was listening to someone lecture on some feature of Google AdWords, and I was asking a simple follow-up question to come to find out this person hadn't actually done those things themselves. Oh, I just heard about this. I thought it'd be a cool thing to share with all of you. It's where I saw that need to get out there and teach, this is what's working for me. And I've kind of come to love the phrase that the more we're all successful, the more we're all successful. So it's where I've had no hesitation teaching people in my specific industry exactly what I'm doing right now. And I can count 5 of them that were within 5 miles of my office right now. So it's that ability that, we can replicate that success. But again, back to the systems, building those multiple streams of income. It was only when this segment of my business was firmly established that I could then metaphorically play with the house's money and now launch this segment of the business. Now, once those things were in motion, now I can launch the next segment of that. And it's where I heard this actually, only heard this in the last 2 years, I believe. Ryan Dice from Digital Marketer, I heard him say in a presentation that they tell their staff that while you're working, you need to also be creating an employee manual for everything that you do. If you ever position yourself as being irreplaceable, we're going to fire you. Instead, you need to approach everything from the mindset that how do I teach someone else to do that? Which that's part of the origin story back as a stage manager in theater. I would have to craft this prompt book, as it was called, which was all the scene changes, all the tracking, all the lighting and sound cues. So if I got hit by a bus, somebody else could pick up that book and run it the same way. So from day one, in the building of the business, thinking about it all in terms of systems. If I'm going to go out and do business networking, these are the things that I say. If I'm going to produce a video, here's the basic format that I'm going to follow. And it's only by building those systems, it was already modular in nature, and it was a natural transition to then share that with other people to go, here's how I do it. Here's the formula that's underneath it. Not necessarily a scripted, just go out there and say these words, though. That's an option at times, but instead, here's how you make it your own. Here's how you draw in your own experiences, your own stories to create your own results.
And I want to go back for a moment to what we said in the introduction when Matt, I asked you, hey, do you want to work smart? Do you want to work hard? Or do you want to work stupid? Sometimes people are a little naive about this and they think, well, if I start working smart, I'm not going to have to work hard. But you have to work hard to start working smart. And perfect example of this, Jason, I used a phrase that you often use and teach, make me one that looks like this.
Yes.
And last week, I outsourced a website project for $99 to someone in Bangladesh. And I found another website that I really liked. And I said, make me one that looks like this. And within 3 days, the entire project was done. And that allowed me to work on other things in that 3 days while he was doing that website. And successfully now, I launched that website just over a week ago, and it's already brought me in $15,000 of new business from working smart. However, there are other things I had to work hard to develop in order to get to that point. The webinar that's on that website, the ebook that's on that website. So I don't want people to misunderstand this and say, oh, I can work this way or this way. There's often a combination of ways you have to work in order to get that result. And when you do it once, and I think, Jason, you'll agree, when you do something once, we should always record it, write it down, so that way it can be very easily duplicated or so you don't have to do it again.
Yeah, it's to look at, and as a personal thing, I'm amused by negative language used in a very positive, healing way. So here's a moment that I go into some sort of event, kind of like what you just did. And at the end of it, wow, that worked extremely well. That went phenomenally well. And it's where I will then backtrack and go, yeah, but how can I make that work better next time? Rather than just step back. It's like, the person who gets some sort of media break in their business. Suddenly there's an article about them. Suddenly they're on television. And their solution is now that they're going to sit in the office and just wait for the phone to ring. Here's a full page feature that I had in the local magazine a few months back. And rather than hope people called in, instead it was, how can I make 1,000 color copies of this and send this to people who need to see this as well? Back to the thing we started talking with first. No, I'd share in the editing of an upcoming project that's also using the work smart catchphrase. One of the first editors who looked at it said, for something called work smart, there aren't really any sort of get-rich-quick schemes inside of here. You should maybe lead with a few things that are a little bit more, sort of easy for people. And I had to respond, yeah, the first name of the book is Work. So it's the fact that, yes, some of the work is going to take effort. There are some days where we're staring at a computer screen. And, I definitely preach outsourcing, the whole make me one like this, or my other catchphrase for outsourcing is make this pretty. There are things that I've drawn in the back of the envelope and shot a video with my phone and just sent it off to an outsourcer to go, yeah, here's what it's supposed to work like. Here's how it's supposed to navigate. And really embracing those strengths that this is what I'm good at. and this is what someone else is better at. There's a quick outsourcing story that years ago I tried to improve something on my website. And my thinking was, I can probably just do this myself faster than I could send the notes. And I crashed the entire website. And my designer at the time, she fixed it. But during the 3 days she was fixing it, she locked me out of the website. She changed my password. And in her language, this is why you pay me. You keep screwing stuff up. And other people I've told that to in business, some would go, oh, did you fire her? I'm like, no, I gave her a massive raise.
Yeah.
That's what she's there for. But you're right. It does take that effort and really taking that critical perspective, not just to sit back and pat ourselves on the shoulder and say, look how great I was. Instead, what made that work? How can I bring that message to perhaps another market? How can I scale that up for the next opportunity, which it may take? I love the sort of reality TV competition show format these days, because so often you look into some of these people who win, and it's not that it was fabricated for television. The voting was real, and the whole story behind it was real. But you find out some of these people, it took them 30 years to become an overnight success.
Right. It's that perception. And to go back to what you were just saying, just because you can doesn't mean you should. And Matt and I have had this conversation many times. In fact, Matt, at first, you and I were putting a lot of work into doing this podcast where we were editing things, we were designing things. And then Matt and I stopped and said, wait an effing minute.
What we did, just to be clear, in order to outsource it, we needed to make sure we knew what we were doing so we could explain what needed to be done. And so that's where we brought in the help, because once we started doing it, and that's, I think, key is explaining how to get these things done. But this goes back to your point too about getting the word out, because if you're starting to do the reach outs and share the information, it doesn't mean you can't also have somebody else do it. You just need to have done it first, know who the people you want to be reaching out to are, and you can always get help to do those things.
Right. I mean, you're exactly right that sometimes you have to at least kind of muscled your way through it and done it badly before you can hand it off to somebody else. I mean, I have a very niche specific podcast that goes out to the hypnosis community. And I think I edited the first 15 episodes just because I was figuring out what it was. I tend to be sometimes a rather visual writer. So there's sometimes the moment where I'm creating a sales page, let's say in Microsoft Word. I'm writing somewhere, or even better in the text editor of my computer, where I can't change the fonts. I can't change the colors. I can't make it big and small. It's just the words. And I'm just kind of drawing things out with hyphens and asterisks, and then handing that off to somebody else, again, with the phrase that Dan mentioned a while ago, make me one like this, make this pretty. The origin story quickly of that was that my local services business, I was thinking, what's another company that sees people for multiple services but of a similar style? And I suddenly started to Google various nail salons, even though I don't do manicures, I don't give pedicures yet. But I was looking around and thinking, and I found this nail salon somewhere in Southern California, and it was manicures, pedicures, hair, other. They were hitting people with those big 3 services that they were featuring up front, and then everything else was a possible drop down. So in terms of my local business, you're hit right away with training, stop smoking, lose weight, everything else is other. So that format of seeing, here's a formula that can fit, but also kind of picking up what I've done myself, handing that off to someone else and just saying, make this work better. I'd share a quick strategy for this, that if you have a website that you've perhaps built yourself, or maybe you're looking at redesigning something someone else has done, even if you're hopping on Upwork is a great resource for this, or Outsourcely is another website for outsourcing that I've had success with before. The strategy in terms of the interview, just to simply say, hey, before I go into the design changes I'd like to create, please tell me what you think is working and not working on my website. And the person who responds just praising everything you've got, do not hire that person. Instead, the person who's willing to be critical. I can't find your phone number. I can't read the font of your website. I had to look for 10 minutes before I ever found your products. These are cues you want to be listening for someone who's going to be honest with you. It's my story from previous of the web designer who was willing to risk her job by locking me out of the website I hired her to work on, because as she put it, this is what you hired me to do. This is what you hired me to help you with.
As the work smart guy, right? And as the business guinea pig, what's something that you massively just freaking failed at, it crashed and burned, and then you recovered from it because you decided to start working smarter?
Okay, yeah, this goes back to something I hinted at earlier of listening to your audience and finding out what their needs are. Now, there's an interesting story inside of this, which I'll generalize to shorten it, is that sometimes you might think you know exactly what people want. And instead, you're delivering what they need. And unfortunately, sometimes that's a disconnect, that you're selling what you think they want, but instead it's really what they need. And these are two different things. So there's a time that I spent so much effort. I mean, I shot a ton of videos. I created several websites. I did a whole online webinar sequence for a live training event that was specifically something that, okay, this is one of those things that really put my business on the map, simply going out there and giving talks about what I was doing. So I created this whole amazing sequence of training. I crafted the information. I spent days. I will very often go into my calendar and I'll block off entire days just for content creation. And I spent all this time building the project and then promoting it. And then from there, we come to the actual event date, and I've only got one person signed up for it. So it's this experience of pouring so much time, energy, all these resources into something that it turns out I can still step back and say this is something that audience needed, but it wasn't necessarily what they wanted. So the next go round, I crafted the message in a very different way. And as people were now signing up, because now I was promoting what they were looking for. I was looking for that audience now that was already hungry rather than trying to convince them they were hungry. So the next go round, I had 30 people sign up for this high dollar coaching event. So it's this whole system now of sometimes we can take my favorite doctor to quote. You probably remember this guy. His name was Dr. Leo Marvin, which of course was the doctor in What About Bob? Baby steps. So this baby steps approach to building a new project, that this little bit of a micro test of perhaps let me just do a webinar and see what the attendance is. Let me now listen to what their questions are. And this is still in that incubation phase to find out, do they have an interest in going further in this business relationship, exploring this idea, this product, this class, whatever it may be. So the biggest mistake, was spending so much time, energy, and money building something that, yes, in the long run, I could acknowledge they needed it, but it wasn't necessarily what they were looking for. And the one person in attendance, which eventually turned into, so, hey, you're the only one. We can do this. I mean, I'm ready for it. And you can travel here, or we can do it by phone, or, hey, here's these two products of mine, lifetime access and a refund. How's that sound? Cool. Wish you the best. So looking at it from listening to the audience, I think is the lesson of this. Just opening up that communication. What's your biggest need? What's your biggest hurdle in this specific thing? And then now crafting the message that I'm ready to deliver to fit what they're actually looking for.
And you've built many six-figure businesses. The one thing to acknowledge is they all relate. And I think that's really important, is because some people say, okay, so maybe you build one business, then you sell it, and you open up and then you open up a hair salon, and then you open up another company. But it's not. It's things that all relate, and that's about working smart, is doing things that are all woven together somehow, and each funnel feeds the other funnel in one way or the other.
There's some people who come into, let's say, one of those segments, and that one goal they're achieving in that segment, that's all they need. Yet again, there's other people who would come in and let's say it's a personal change environment and they're having a result, they're enjoying it, but now their mind is starting to think, hey, this cleared up this part of my business. This made me think differently about my relationships. Let me take a class. And then from there, perhaps they start to develop a fascination with it. Well, how do I actually now turn this into a profession? And now they're moving to the next step. So it's where you're right in terms of building things that naturally complement each other. It's that mindset that, I've heard some say they're going to speak to a group and the question in their mind is, what can I sell these people? Instead, to ask the question, what can I give these people? What experience can I share with them? So now it's a natural progression to take that next step rather than think of it in terms of manipulation or conversion. Instead, letting those things naturally occur because now it's what that person's actually looking for.
I've done a couple of experiments with this, and it's funny because all of us on this podcast now speak in front of groups in one way or another. And I've experimented with selling people in back of room product, with selling people after I do a talk or an event, and then offering something to another group, offering something of value that they can opt in for, and then selling them something later. And I sold just about the same both ways.
You can have pizza at the Chinese food buffet.
Exactly. But Matt, not Big Mac pizza at the Chinese food buffet. So
Although
I had to get it in there.
Maybe make it.
You can make it with the you could get, never mind.
Yes.
Probably end up with some General Gal's pizza or something.
But only if there was a book for this. Something about working smart. Only if there was a book.
And it applied to business.
Is there a book for this?
Wow. That'll never work.
You get a book. Yeah, my book, Work Smart Business. It's available actually by heading over to worksmartbusiness.com, and that'll give you actually a preview of 2 chapters of the book. One in terms of what I call power of premise. How do you take negative thinking and now turn it into something actually powerful? I mean, part of my backstory was I was receiving the negative feedback that, it's going to be slow your first year. You're not going to get referrals right away. And I refuse to buy into that premise. So by heading to worksmartbusiness.com, you get that chapter of the book, plus a linguistic pattern for ethical influence. You'll get that as well. And that'll also give you all the details in terms of how to pick up a copy of that book, Work Smart Business, which is again over at worksmartbusiness.com.
Awesome. Jason, thank you so much for being on with us today. And to our Square Peg Round Holers, stay tuned for our Yahoo Moments because we talked to Jason. Now we're going to talk about him.
About Jason. Thanks, Jason.
Hey, Matt, what's your Yahoo moment?
Yahoo with Jason Linett today. Great guest, good friend of yours. Thank you for coming on, Jason. My Yahoo moment is that you need to be listening to your audience. And I tie that back into the idea that you're sharing information with them in lots of different ways, whether it's about your business or whether it's about their business. If you're not listening, you're not going to know what they want. So you definitely need to find ways to listen to your audience. I talk about that in my talk all the time, that listening is the second pillar in your personal care package. Obviously, you knew I was going to pull that out of the 30-minute interview. So definitely listen to your audience. What about you, Dan?
My Yahoo moment for Jason was, as you're listening, sell them what they want and deliver what they need. And more specifically, sell them what they want emotionally and deliver what they need to fulfill that emotion. And a lot of it is providing value upfront to people. So it delivers value to them. It solves a portion of their problem, and also gets them to know you, like you, and trust you. And it positions you as the credible source and the authority. So a lot.
And that in and of itself is a value bomb.
Absolutely. Go out and provide value, folks.
You just listened to the SPRH podcast with Matt Ward and Dan Candell, where you learn from the pros how to take massive action. Remember, have yourself an action-oriented day.